And when we rescue our children and don't have them work, or don't do the things that are important in these different developmental crises, these children do not develop properly. And they carry a deficit from age level to age level. And it becomes harder and harder. Rescuing parents set their children up for high risk for drugs and suicide. Because the kids never learn to cope. And suicide is the ultimate escape, isn't it? You want to rescue your kids? You think you can't stand by and see them suffer? You can't stand by and see them not go to the prom? You can't stand by and see them flunk second grade? You can't stand it, you can't stand it, you can't stand it. And so to satisfy your anxiety and lower your anxiety, you step in and rescue. Let me talk to you about rescuing. Here's a little poem on struggle. A man found a cocoon of the emperor moth and took it home to watch it emerge. One day a small opening appeared, and for several hours the moth struggled but couldn't seem to force its body past a certain point. Deciding something was wrong, the man took scissors and snipped the remaining bit of cocoon. The moth emerged easily, its body large and swollen, the wings small and shriveled. He expected that in a few hours the wings would spread out in their natural beauty, but they did not. Instead of developing into a creature free to fly, the moth spent its life dragging around a swollen body and shriveled wings. The constricting cocoon and the struggle necessary to pass through the tiny opening are God's way of forcing fluid from the body into the wings. The merciful snip was in reality cruel. Sometimes the struggle is exactly what we need. Does this carry a message to you? You have got to have the courage to step back and allow your children to struggle and to fail and to cope with failure and to cope with disappointment and cope with fear. To jump in and rescue and make their life easy is the cruel thing to do. It's much worse than letting them struggle. Guilt or shame? What is the difference between guilt or shame? Guilt is, I made a mistake. I'm truly sorry and we will fix it. I broke the thing and I'll pay for it. But shame is totally different. Shame is, I am the mistake. I am flawed. There is something very wrong with me. I am not worthy. That is shame. This comes from anger and criticism, etc. Can you see the result of this? The shaming of a child is child abuse. Let's read this. When we attempt to criticize and control others with power, attempting to take away their agency, we violate their sacred right of freedom of choice. This is an act of abuse and violence upon them. When we contend with them in anger to frighten and coerce them, the damage is doubled. How is a person shamed? Shaming is the process of treating a person, in this case a child, okay? Shaming is the process of treating a person in such disrespectful ways that he comes to feel diminished or insufficient as a person, and to believe that he is basically bad, flawed, incomplete, or not fully valid as a human being. Such a person is self-judging and self-condemning, and thus constantly reinforcing a haunting and pervasive sense of personal inadequacy and unworthiness. Do you people know what I'm talking about? Have you got a little of this? Shame is poison. A shame-bound family is a family with a self-sustaining, multi-generational system of interaction with a cast of characters who are or were loyal to a set of rules and injunctions, demanding control, perfectionism, blame, and denial. The pattern inhibits or defeats the development of authentic, intimate relationships. It promotes secrets and vague personal boundaries, unconsciously instills shame in the family members, chaos in their lives, and binds them to perpetuate the shame in themselves and their kin. It does so regardless of the good intentions, the wishes, and love which may also be part of the system. The shame comes from what? Shame comes from these parent traps. There are many, many parent traps. Blaming and scolding, fighting and hitting, nagging and lecturing, intimidating and raging, unrealistic expectations, coercing and threatening, arguing and contending, yelling and humiliating, teenage retirement, rescuing and shaming. Now, psychologists talk about the needs of people. We are needy as a human being. We have certain needs that must be fulfilled. And you will hear it over and over, that these two needs are intimacy and freedom. On the one hand, people need intimacy. They need to be loved, to be accepted, to be needed, to be respected, to be valued as persons, unconditionally loved, treasured, adored. And on the other hand, they need to be free. Free to feel their own feelings, to have their own thoughts, to believe what they want to believe, to say, to like, to do, according to their own desires, to be free. Now, do you see a conflict in this model? The desire to be loved and to be intimate, and yet the desire to be free. Do you understand? In counseling, our big problems are how to be intimate and not enmeshed, not to be too close. And how to be free and not to be cut off. How not to be too free. And so there seems to be a balance here, depending on the age and the personalities involved. Now, after studying this and counseling, I have a little different opinion of this.